My name is David von Navarrete. Today I'll be talking to you about a writing process from my particular standpoint in the disciplines, covering, generally speaking, the humanities. The first thing I guess we should talk about is that humanities includes a very broad set of academic disciplines. In my case, I'm a musician, I'm an artist, and I'm also an ethnomusicologist. So you can see here music, art, even philosophy, theology, all of these things come into what I do. A lot of people know exactly what musicians and artists do, but very few people seem to know much about ethnomusicology. Put very simply, ethnomusicology is the study of music and culture. You could also say it's music as culture or music in culture. Oftentimes, ethnomusicologists will study and teach in either university music or anthropology departments, depending on the sort of structural emphasis on music or culture. In practice, most ethnomusicologists typically study music of non-Western cultures. In my case, I specialize in studying West African music and Afro-Cuban music. I also study quite a bit about experimental art music. Those are also the things that I specialize in as an artist. Here you have some images. On the left you see a still from a video I made in West Africa, in the Gambia, of some farming music. On the top right you see one of my mentors and dear friends, Ezequiel Torres, who's an Afro-Cuban master drummer and drum maker. And on the bottom right there, you see a Dutch artist and colleague of mine, Jaap Blonk, who's quite a well-known and interesting experimental music artist. In my case, I put music first. Even if what I end up writing about has a lot to do with history or culture or even politics, generally speaking, I think that paying more attention to the music and sound can also give some really useful insights into writing. If we hear our own writing, for example, by reading it out loud, ourselves or asking somebody to read it for us, we often become aware of dimensions that, if we're just looking at it on the page, can remain pretty obscure. We become aware of hearing grammar and phrasing in different ways, but we also become aware of rhythms and textures in the writing. Also, I think a lot of what I do is research-based. So something I hear or I see or I read becomes material for something I write about later. Of course, if you play music and you're writing about music and studying it, it may come from something that you're studying as a performer, or just listening to something. And listening, and lots of listening. And as writers, always, I think doing lots and lots of reading is the fundamental thing that makes us better writers. I like to then just make notes of everything that comes into my head that I think might be useful later. I have lots of notebooks in here. You see a couple of them from over the years, and on the right there with some sketches of musical notation. I also, like a lot of people, use the internet as a pretty indispensable research tool for a lot of things. Here on the left you see a YouTube video taken by someone else, Mr. Schweitzer, on a style of drumming that I've researched myself in West Africa. So a lot of times, one thing I'll do that I find quite useful is making a set of bookmarks related to a particular topic that I'm researching. In this case, this went into a very big folder I have of bookmarks on Bugarabu drumming, which was the subject of my PhD dissertation. Another thing that I do quite a bit in my writing process is interviewing people. Informally sometimes, but oftentimes formally, like a journalist or an anthropologist might. This also involves translating quite a bit from one language to another. Transcribing conversations is really time-consuming. If you listen really closely to how most of us speak, though, in normal conversation, you'll quickly realize that writing what most people say word for word usually calls for quite a bit of editing, and that the transition from a spoken word to a written one involves a set of translation itself. Here in the left of the screen, you're seeing two of the master drummers that I spent a lot of time with in the Gambia and West Africa. This is on the left, Modu Tamba, and on the right there, Landing Tamba. These are uncle and nephew who are my teachers and friends. Like I said, a lot of this is research-based too, and so I deal with sometimes hard data. In this case, I'm visualizing the tempo of a performance, how fast or slow it got over a given length of time. And another type of visualization is on the right there, some pretty standard music notation, but on the left, a different way of seeing it on the page. And here you have a screen capture of an article that I did for a peer-reviewed journal called Ethnomusicology Review. I liked very much what Professor Comer mentions in her video about recursive and overlapping stages of writing. So you're always going back to certain things, redoing them in different ways, and the process of writing and rewriting tends to overlap quite a bit. So it's the idea that things are kind of always a work in progress. I like that very much. When you get into peer review, other people evaluating your writing, offering feedback, it becomes a type of collaboration, and that's another part of the writing process that can be really challenging, but is also incredibly valuable and can be a lot of fun. And finally, one of the things that I tend to do in my discipline is combine different types of media into the writing. So it's not just about the text, it's also about audio and visuals of different kinds. The top of the screen here, you see that there's an audio clip that you can play in this article. There's also quotation like you would see in other academic writing, and in the bottom you see some of the music notation that I used. All of these things to illustrate or serve a point. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care.